I would say let's dive straight into it. We will start with an introductory session by myself, but I will not do that alone. It's an introductory session that touches upon the energy buyer of the future. And to do this, I will take a bit of a risk, and the risk is that I'll invite someone on stage whose lifelong dream has been to be in a hall like this, on a stage like this, to sing opera. So not sure if you will present or sing, but please, a warm welcome for one of the founding fathers of ENC, Benedict de Meulemeester. Okay, change. The energy transition is changing at an incredible pace. And we need to be aware of that because we truly believe that that change in the energy transition, it's not just a challenge that makes things more complex, but it is a huge opportunity. It is an opportunity for your companies to be much more competitive. This means as well that if you do not take that opportunity, it will come at an opportunity cost, meaning not adapting to that new reality will cost money. So it's time to get insights on what is happening, where we are today, and how you can approach that. Now, the energy transition in itself, although it not always looks like that, it goes at an incredible speed. It goes much faster than anyone ever anticipated. And this is something that we keep on underestimating. And this is seen, for example, in the growth of new technologies, which is not linear. Every forecast is always linear, but the reality is the famous S-curve. Right? Slow adaptation and then exponential growth. So we keep on underestimating that. And that results into massive amounts of money being poured into clean tech solutions. So new technologies are attracting billions. Now, it took us a few decades to invest $1 trillion into new technologies. It will take us 4 years for the next trillion. Right? So the speed at which this is going is astonishing. And this results in better and better technologies. So you see that the number of patents is shooting up, the density of batteries keeps on improving, the efficiency of solar panels keeps on improving, the wind turbines, they keep on getting bigger, and thus much more efficient. Now, what is the result of that is that the power they output keeps coming at an ever lower cost. And actually, solar is already historically the cheapest source of energy. And what is expected that before the end of this decade, to produce your power, the cost will even go down with 50% even more. So those new renewable technologies, they make financial sense and does explain that rapid integration into the energy system. Two products that we really want to highlight that at this moment start playing an absolute key role, much more than any others, is solar and batteries. If you look at those curves, it's absolutely incredible. Solar is expected to take over gas and coal and become the biggest renewable energy capacity in the world in the next 2 years. And for battery storage, just to give you an idea, we're already at the level of pumped hydro storage, but we will take it to the next level in the course of 2024, where the total capacity of battery storage will surpass that of pumped hydro. So the amount of batteries installed is also taking us at an incredible speed. Now, the energy transition is also real, and you can see that this is an example of a brown coal power plant in Australia that has been torn down, and today it looks like this. It is a 350 megawatt. It's exactly the same site. It's a 350 megawatt battery connected to the grid. So this is already happening. It's very visible. Another example is this coal-fired power plant in Florida, 4 coal-fired units. And what is interesting about that, because it's a bit of an intermediate step into this energy transition, 2 of those coal-fired units are being torn down, 1 keeps running, and 1 is being refurbished into a gas-fired one. And next to that, they install storage solutions and solar panels on site. So these are just anecdotal examples of that energy transitioning happening right in front of our eyes. Now, it is very important in this incredible speed of innovation and change in that market that, of course, we adapt. And you as energy buyers are faced with all these new challenges. And what we did is we actually looked a bit at 5 anonymized clients in our client portfolio. Various industries, various levels of energy spent. And we compared how those companies were buying energy in 2019 and how they are buying energy in 2024. So in a time span of just 5 years, what we have seen on the other side, on your side, is also astonishing. The first comparison we did is the headcount, so full-time equivalents. This can be full-time dedicated equivalent, so an energy buyer full-time, or summing up 20% of someone in a place, 20% of someone else, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at those examples, the headcount in this first example, the company with building materials, went from 2 to 5 energy buyers. The other one, 4 to 12. 1 to 3, 2 to 5, 3 to 8. So we just have a lot more people around the table, resulting in a very aggressive search for energy talent and energy market expertise. I'm sure lots of you have been contacted by a lot of companies in the past few years. There is an enormous need. The energy market price crisis is, of course, an important driver of that. The second comparison we did is to look at how advanced the companies in their energy transition. And by advanced, we mean to what extent is energy transition efforts, decarbonization products, integrated with the procurement? Because in the early days of the energy transition, companies started building a sustainability department that did not talk to energy procurement, resulting in catastrophes, right? So to what extent are those two talking to each other? Is there a goal and some sort of roadmap and already some projects running? And we score them from a scale from 1 to 5. So there you see an enormous focus, quite dependent on industry as well. Some industries were very late with their focus on it, but today almost all of your companies have at least a target, some sort of roadmap, and first projects being auto production, offsite PPAs, etc. So an enormous increase in focus on the energy transition. Now, when we talk energy transition, there's a lot of misconceptions or confusions about what is exactly what. And the best way to visualize what the corporate energy transition is this picture. So you see 3 different elements. What we say is the outer shell is what we call any kind of sustainability initiative. And rightfully so, you might still have those sustainability departments in your company, but they work on a lot more topics than what we do. Okay? That is the sustainability part. The second layer of this, or the second part of this shell, is anything that is decarbonization. But decarbonization, as you all know, you've got scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, so it's also quite a broad topic, but it touches already upon what you do. The corporate energy transition is really switching to this green energy with a combination of buying certificates, auto production, PPAs, etc., etc. So it's greening the supply of energy that you need to produce your products. So on this one, Benedict, question for you. We have a room full of energy buyers here. How do you see them tackle those 3 levels or those 3 dimensions of the corporate energy transition?
Well, of course, the energy transition is getting all of you in touch with other people in the company, sustainability, C-level people who have a high interest in this. So I think this is a unique opportunity for energy procurement to get more profile in your companies. So that's a very important message we want to give, that for energy procurement teams, energy transition is a very great opportunity. Of course, you are only focused on scope 1 and 2. We all know that decarbonizing heat supply is much more complex than decarbonizing electricity. So for the moment, this is mostly about buying EACs, certificates, and then going into the PPA market. But there's a lot more around the corner. Smart energy is around the corner, and there will be some very impactful decisions, even for the long-term survival strategy of a company, that have to be taken there. And there, as an energy buyer, you can have a very, very important role. So I would give as a message, focus yourselves on that corporate energy transition, help your company to switch to renewable energy, electricity in the first place, and then also promote those ideas that industrial processes need to be rethought in the context of the supply no longer being there when you need it, but the supply being there when the wind is blowing and the sun is shining.
All right, great. Now, the energy transition, we could basically chop it up into 3 phases. The first phase of that energy transition is, let's say, 2010, 2015. new technologies that need a lot of subsidies to be cost competitive, and you have some early adopters who use them, and then you have a bunch of companies saying, okay, that's way too early, too expensive, not for me, so I green with certificates. A second phase is the phase where those technologies became cost competitive. So you go green because it makes financial sense, and that is the start of a lot of activities on PPAs. So you combine certificate buying with PPAs. Today, we found ourselves at the start of the third phase. Now, Benedict, can you explain a bit more what this third phase is, and why is the moment there now, and was it not a few years ago?
Yep. What you see is as soon as you start getting 20% of the electricity production that is coming from solar and wind, then really that intermittency of those sources starts to become a problem. And Europe as a whole is at this moment around that 20%. Many countries are already above that. So it really becomes important to match demand to that more variable supply. So this is the age of smart energy. It's there. And we also see that big tech, they were the first ones to look at PPAs as the new preferred instrument for corporate energy transition efforts. They've come up with something new, 24/7 renewables. So that means that you're matching your certificates not on an annual basis. This is what we do today. We are just looking at, okay, we consumed in a certain country 50,000 megawatt hours. We buy 50,000 certificates, or through PPAs we have 50,000 megawatt hours. And then we are 100% renewable. But of course, everybody knows that during many hours, your electricity will actually have come from a fossil fuel source. So that's the idea of really saying hour by hour, my electricity came from renewable sources. This is 24/7 renewables. It's incredibly interesting because the market model developed around this also means that certificates will vary in price per hour. So you will have very expensive hours, very cheap hours to buy green electricity. And slowly we start seeing that the idea of not being 100% renewable, so not every hour is acceptable, but for example, being 60% of the hours renewable is also already a good target to be met. So this is a very interesting model towards the future, and one which you need to start preparing for. If you are buying up to very high volumes with PPAs, for example, then it will be more challenging to meet the 24/7 target. So it's something to be thought about, how exactly, and of course also, how can you make your demand more flexible so that you can meet those targets more easily.
Now, a much more decentral production of renewable energy also means that we step away a bit from the classical market design with a bottom-up controller of supply and demand. How will supply and demand actually be balanced going forward?
Yeah. What you see still today is that a lot of analysts and participants in the energy market, definitely grid operators, they remain a bit stuck in the previous paradigm. They keep thinking in this centralized top-down system where there's somebody in the middle of that is going to decide where the megawatt hours are going. What you see today is if people build batteries, for example, if they have flexible demand, they are actually, instead of taking control over this themselves, they are giving it away to an aggregator, to a grid company, to a supplier to do things with it. I sometimes call that the Homer Simpson syndrome. We all remember from The Simpsons, Homer was switching off and then the whole village was without light. And that's how a lot of traditional energy market actors are still looking at it. What we believe very strongly in is that if you want to make this flexible demand work, if we want to make this new market work, if we want to make it really smart, we need to build a bottom-up ecology of interconnected systems who all have their algorithms taking decisions, and then somehow this all comes together. But if you give it the right price signals, if you make sure, if you do market design so that when there is a shortage somewhere, the price goes up, and there is an incentive for all those algorithms to give out a signal to cut down demand and to start supplying from batteries, that then it will work. So this could be the very exciting world that we are moving to, where all these systems are working on their own to optimize it for themselves, and the ultimate outcome is that the system remains balanced and it's doing so at a very efficient cost.
All right. This also brings about this increased complexity, a data challenge. So we have some very simple questions, but from some very difficult answers. So the simple questions, what is actually our net consumption? Is a very hard one to answer. What is my cost? Very hard one to answer. How much green do I actually have? Same challenge to respond to that. This is a picture of a client being 73.2% hedged. To come to that number, to answer your CFO to that question, we're covered for 73.2% at this price. There are 10,000 data points behind that. And that is because of this increased diversified supply that makes it much more challenging. To give you an example, to come to your consumption, this is the calculation that you have to do to really understand what your net consumption is. So you look at how much megawatt hours do I produce on-site, plus the produced megawatt hours in my off-site PPA, minus those produced volumes in case that PPA is financially settled, because actually they sold it back, plus again, what megawatt hours do I took from the grid, minus the ones that I injected into the grid, plus the ones that I consumed from my on-site batteries, minus the one that I injected in. So your calculation to come to net consumption is quite a challenge. Now, take that to cost level, and each time at the same level, you will see how you have to calculate to come to that total cost. And actually, on top of that, there's the question about grid fees, because in some cases you have to pay them, in some cases you don't. Even if you auto-produce, but you inject, there might be some cost to that, to inject into the grid, et cetera, et cetera. So quite a complex challenge. Now, in this phase of increased complexity, there's a great app. There's a great app that has nothing to do with energy, but at the same time, a lot. This is an app for those of you who have old Lego blocks. You throw your Lego blocks on the floor, you scan it, and this app, Brickit, it's called, you can download it for free, it scans the pieces and tells you what you can build from those pieces. And then even with an artificial intelligence, it will tell you where that piece is that you need to build that bird or that car or whatever. And it indicates what is possible based on this collection of Lego blocks. Now you could think, what's the correlation? And for that, Benedict made a very ugly slide. Benedict, Lego blocks and then your slide. Help me out.
So when you used to have your slide of your consumption profile, the only thing you would see was the blue line. That was your consumption. After energy transition, this is what you will see. So you have on-site solar, who has a very variable production, of course. You can't see it very clearly, but behind it is also off-site wind PPA, which is for a smaller capacity than actually the peaks you're making in this case. And then I also simulated a battery that is just switching around from the two cheapest hour charging then and discharging in the two most expensive hours. So it's just continuously charging, discharging, leading then ultimately to that orange line, so a much more variable portfolio, of course. And the art will be to look at this and find opportunities in this. Where do I find something here with which I can do something? Here I have a load that I can use to shift around, and I can do things with this that are overall lowering the cost of my factory. The factory of the future will have to do this successfully, or else you will be outcompeted by those who are faster in looking at this with a good eye than you are. And I wouldn't recommend you to start staring yourselves at graphs like this for very long hours to find it, but exactly, it is going to be technology like the one Jens was showing that is going to do this for you. So that's another warm recommendation we have. There are so many startups now at this moment in the energy space. There are so many interesting things happening. Have a very good look at it to find the right technologies to help you doing this.
All right. But I think we also have quite a lot of people in the room having signed their first PPAs. Now, we've talked about the data challenge, the profile challenge in getting that together, but there's also risk management challenge because you have this diversified, complex set of contracts. How do we see people manage those, for example, PPAs from a risk management perspective?
Yeah. What we mostly see today is, as long as the complexity is not too high, so for example, a single PPA in one country, then at that moment, it is just being, most of the clients are taking the option to try to sleeve it into their physical supply contract, so that somehow it pops up in your invoice from your energy supplier. With cross-border PPAs, or if you start having a mixture of PPAs in one country, it gets more complex. And then often a lot of clients are choosing Model 2, just selling all the electricity into the market of production, and then looking at revenue cost as the cost of greening, which is a simple but suboptimal alternative. If we go back to the previous slides and you really want to make the most out of it, you need to start making your total cost calculations, taking into account also the PPAs you signed, but that will require a very complex data and risk management to do that successfully.
And just to add one more level of complexity to it, invoices. Because you say somewhere it pops up in an invoice that you have that PPA. How can you reconcile all of that? How can it come together?
Yeah, again, we see a lot of companies today are just trying to simplify it by pushing it as much as possible into the invoice of the residual supplier. But as those residual suppliers see their share of the cake become less and less, they're more and more reluctant to do that, of course. And that creates what you need to start thinking about there is that, for example, central energy procurement collects all those invoices. So everything is invoiced to a central level, and then there you do the reconciliation and you send internal invoices. So as you can see, energy procurement is also an organization question today. How do you organize these things? How do you reorganize yourself to make sure that you can keep your heads up in this energy transition?
Okay, thank you very much. To sum up, some key takeaways, some high-level points. Many of them we will go much more in-depth in the next sessions. So we've got some challenges. The fact that everyone always keeps on underestimating the speed at which this is going. Your organizational setup, you've seen the evolution with many of the customers that we serve. No longer think top-down in the market design, but bottom-up, decentralized. Key takeaway to understand where we're going. Your data, you have to get it under control and use technology to do that in an optimal way. You need to understand your new profile because it is really impacted by all initiatives that we see. Adapt your risk management approach. So the two extreme models there, where are you and what will you do going forward? And then the billing and accounting approach are other challenges. So whatever will happen, whatever opinions we have today, you will have no choice but to adapt. So ending with a quote from our friend Winston Churchill, that actually we have no choice. So let's dive into it. Let's be the ones that gain competitive advantage by thinking this through, positioning your company and adapting your strategy, your organization accordingly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Benedict.